Hello, welcome to Zigmatech Learning Hub. I'll be your instructor for English language. For this class, we are going to be taking our exercises from the ExamGuide app. If you don't have the application already installed on your device, I will want you to download the app in order to follow along in the class. ExamGuide is a leading educational app that helps students prepare adequately for various exams like UTME, post-UTME, WEAC, GCE, KCPE, IJMB, JUPEB, BECE, JSCE, NCEE, NECO, etc. You can download the app from www.examguide.com or Google Play Store. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to be updated on new videos. Ready for today's class? Okay, let's get started. Welcome to today's lesson. Our topic for today is formal letter writing. Formal letter writing. In our previous lesson, we looked at informal letter writing. There, I explained to us what letter writing is, and I would again emphasize on what it is, that it is a means of communication. Whichever way you look at it, we communicate via letter writing. Now, it's important for us to know that in the previous lesson, we looked at letter writing as a form of communication in an informal way. Letter writing as a form of communication in an informal way. And by that, we meant that it involved personal writing. Letters that we write to friends, we write to relations, and we write to parents and loved ones, our acquaintances. But today we want to deviate a little from the informal form of letter writing to the formal form of letter writing. You and I know very well that we communicate with people virtually every day, and we don't restrict our communication to people that we have informal relationships with, except we are saying we don't want to meet people and work with people. So because we have people that we work with, our lives are not basically centered on family, but our lives, we extend it to people that we do not know, and we meet because we have working relationships with them. And that is why we want to look at formal letter writing. That's another way of communicating our ideas to people. So we'll start off immediately. What is a formal letter writing? Now, remember in our previous class, we stated that we have three types of letter writing: the informal letter writing, the formal letter writing, and the semi-formal letter writing. Now, we said, I'm trying to do a recap. We said that informal letter writing is a form of letter writing written to friends, to families, to loved ones, acquaintances, so to say. Then we want to look at formal letter writing. We said that formal letter writing is a business letter, all right? Formal letter writing basically is a business letter. That is another name for it. So when we talk about a business letter, you will agree with me that it has to do with people that we don't have close relationship with. You want to go into a business, you want to pass an information to someone you don't know, but there is something you think he or she can help you sort out. That's a formal letter. It's business. We are here to talk business. We're not here for formalities. We're not here for pleasantries. We are not here for chats. We are not here for tete-a-tete. What we are here for is what's business. I have something I want to tell you. I think you're in the right position to solve the problem. So I write to you, I communicate that to you via letter, and you respond to me. So we say that a formal letter is one written in a formal way and uses formal language. It is written in a formal way and it uses formal language. Now, it is very important for us to know that the language of informal letter is different from the language of formal letter. I remember telling us that in informal letter, you can use what we call contracted form of words, but that is not allowed in a formal letter because the person you're writing to, remember, it doesn't have a close relationship with you. So you don't assume that you could write to the person in a chatty way. Remember we said it's a business letter, and because it's a business letter, it demands formal language. So as we continue, we'll look at some of these formal languages that we're talking about. So such letters are written for official purposes to authorities. It's very important. Remember, you are not looking at letter writing for, we're not treating letter writing for treating sake. We're treating it because we know that you will encounter such in an exam. And if you are not conversant with what surrounds a formal letter and how to identify a formal letter, you will find it difficult attempting such question in an exam. So we said that formal letters are written for official purposes to authorities, dignitaries, colleagues and seniors, etc. You write it to authorities, you can write to a media house, you can write to the governor, you can write to the president, you can write to the principal of a school, you can write to the vice principal of a school, you can write to a director of a company. So these are people you write to, people who occupy positions. All right, he said, and not to personal contacts, not to personal contacts. Now, hear this, that when you write a formal letter to someone, that formal letter, or rather to someone in authority, the formal letter is filed. It is filed in the sense that this person you wrote to, it's not the individual in question that you're writing to, but rather you are writing to the office that the person occupies. So even if my father were to be the president and I'm asked to write to the president, I would not say because my father is the president, I will write him an informal letter. It is outrightly wrong. I will write a formal letter to the president overlooking the individual who is involved. I'm writing to the office of the president and not to my father. So when you're writing a formal letter, you should understand that you're not writing to personal contacts. You're not writing to friends. You're not writing to family. Rather, you're focusing on the office of that person. So once you're asked to write a letter to maybe the senior prefect of your school, let me go in that light. If you're asked to write a letter to a senior prefect of your school, and this senior prefect you know is your bosom friend, you are not going to assume that because she or he is your bosom friend, you could write an informal letter to him or her. No, it is wrong. You are writing to the office, and that office, what we're looking at, is the senior prefect. So it's possible for you to even write a formal letter to your friend, but remember, it is the position or the office that you're writing to, not the individual in question. I just want to believe that I've cleared that, because I remember one particular exam, such question was asked, write a letter to the head prefect of your school, and some people quickly, the students, wrote informal letter writing. So that's why I'm trying to take time to clear the fact that in a formal letter, it is the office that you look at, not the person. So when you're asked to write a letter to the senior prefect, write a letter to your class prefect, write a letter, to the head girl of your school, you're writing to that office and not to the individual. So at that point, it is a formal letter that you would write and not an informal letter. I believe that has been taken down. So a number of conventions must be adhered to while drafting formal letters. Formal letters can be written for a number of reasons, such as, what are the number of reasons? To express your concerns while working in a professional setup. To express your concern. Something isn't going the way you want it. You want to express your concern, you write directly to your boss, the managing director, whatever company or whatever firm it is. So you are writing for professional setup, not for friendship, not for personal setups. So what other reason do we write formal letters for? To provide official information across your workplace. You want to provide official information, you're writing a formal letter. To other goods, to apply for employment, etc. To the editor of a newspaper addressing the problems faced by various groups of people in different areas. So these are reasons for which we write a formal letter. You agree with me that none of these can just be an informal letter, because it has nothing to do with family, it has nothing to do with friends, It has nothing to do with acquaintances. All right, let's continue. So we want to look at types of formal letter. Types of formal letter. There are different types of formal letters as discussed, and they can generally be labeled under the following terms. You have a business letter. So whatever kind of letter that you want to write that is relating to business transaction, yes, transaction, you can refer to it as business letter. We have letters of application. You're seeking for a job, you want to apply for something, that is letters of application. Then we have letters to newspapers. Letters to newspapers, there are things you want the newspaper firm possibly to project for you, make the world know about it. You write to them suggesting that they should help you publish or make available what you have for them. Now let's look at first the business letter. It says that the business letters should be terse, clear, and to the point. There is no need playing around, no need for informal language. There is no room for pleasantries. You rather go straight to the point. Why would you be asking maybe the director of a particular firm how he is? You don't have such relationship. You don't have close relationship with him. The relationship you have with the person is formal, and as such, your words should be formal. There is no room for any kind of stories in business letter. Exactly what I've said. Any kind of stories, in the sense that there is no room for how are you? I hope you're fine. Did you sleep well today? Was your night peaceful? There's no room for that. You just go straight and discuss the business for the day. Before you start to write a business letter, there are a few things you should keep in mind. Let's look at those few things. Use simple, everyday language to convey the message clearly, instead of using flamboyant and over-emphatic vocabulary. People are good at making use highfalutin words. There's nothing as good as keeping it simple. Yes, you just have to keep it simple. Everyday language. Don't go looking for, words or proverbs or idioms that are hard to understand. Remember, you're writing to someone, you don't know the level of the person's education, so you are expected to keep it simple. Let your words be simple. Make use of your right tenses and leave it simple. Never use jargon that is commonly used in business when you write a business letter that is not commonly used. Please, when we talk about jargons, we talk about words that are actually related to a particular field. When you use jargons, words that are not meant to be used, the person may not understand. Remember, you're writing to someone, and the essence of letter, remember we said, is for communication. It was a way through which people communicated to one another. So if you're writing and you're using jargons, those words that are, restricted to a particular field, how do you expect the person to get the message you want to pass across? So avoid using abbreviations as much as possible. Yes, very important. Don't use abbreviations. People may not understand it. Abbreviations are informal ways of writing, and as such must not be used in a formal letter. The modes of address vary according to the type of letter and the receiver. Perfect. If I'm writing to the Commissioner of Education, the address of the receiver definitely will be different from the one when I'm writing to maybe the director. If I'm writing to a commissioner, the address will be the Commissioner, Ministry of Education, Obiakpon Community, Rivers State. Then if I'm writing to a director of a company, it will now be the director, Zigmatech Limited of NECO. That's just it. So if the person I'm writing to is different from another, definitely the addresses will be different. They will not be the exact same thing. The only address that remains the same is the writer's address. When you come to an formal letter, the address of the writer remains same. If the writer wants to write to about 5 persons, all right, different letters, formal letter, the address of the writer remains same. But you see that for the receivers, their address will not be the same thing because they are different people and their offices are different. Now, clear and exact descriptions of the articles necessary with the expected quality and quantity should be listed with utmost care when you write a letter to order goods. So that's clear. So you must make clear whatever it is you're requesting for in your letter. Remember, language is for communication. If you are not able to communicate effectively, it will affect your demand. So if you're ordering for something and you're writing a formal letter ordering for that thing, you must make sure that the language is clear enough to the receiver. So when replying to a business letter, always quote the date of the letter you are responding to and its reference numbers, that's if any. It's very important because remember, if you don't quote the date, it will be agreed or termed that you do not have a full knowledge of what you have written for. So formal or business letters include letters from an employer to the employees and vice versa. So an employer can actually write a formal letter to an employee, and an employee can as well write a formal letter to an employer. So letters to order and replace goods, letters of serious concern to an officer of higher rank, letter of what? Complaint. So these are aspects of letter titles on informal letter that one can write either to the employer or an employer to an employee. So letters of what? Application. Remember, we said that our formal letter writings can fully be classified under 3: the business letter, letters of application, and letter to newspapers. So we have looked at the business letter and what it entails. Now we want to look at letters of application. Letters of application usually consist of letters applying for employment. The moment you are done with school, some people will say, I may not have to write a letter. My dear, you will definitely write a letter. The only difference may be that you won't have to do so with your pen and paper, but you will do so in the internet. Yes, you can type your letter, but at that time, it is still you doing it. So you must understand the rudiments of this formal letter writing. And when you finally get a job, understand that there are times when you'll be asked to write a letter or do a memo to people. So you must know that formal words are expected. So letters of application usually consist of letters applying for employment. Before and after you write a letter of application, make sure you check the following. Always start with a short introduction stating whether the applicant is writing in response to a reference from an advertisement found online or in the newspaper. I remember way back when we just finished service and we're applying for jobs. Definitely we'll go to newspapers, we'll buy a lot of newspapers, and we desire to find jobs. And when we are applying, definitely we stated where it was coming from according to Guardian's newspaper dated 12th October 2010 on their advert placement for a secretary. I write to apply for the position of a secretary. Then you start off with the next paragraph. So you see that that's my introduction. My introduction isn't same as the informal where I will begin to ask, how are you? I hope you're fine. No. Rather, I go straight to let them know that, oh, I read a particular newspaper, and through that newspaper, I'm writing to seek for the position of this job. So state the age, education, and experience of the applicant. Provide the employer with a genuine expressions of the applicant's earnestness in taking up the job in the respective company. Also furnish references so that the employer can gather an idea of the kind of employee you would be. So letters of application should follow the format of the formal business letter. And then finally, we have letters to newspapers. Letters to newspapers. Always address these letters to the editor. That's the truth, because those are the people that are in charge, and end with yours faithfully. Letters to the editor are letters that express concerns that should be addressed to the higher authorities. These letters should be professional and authentic. No newspaper would publish anonymous letters. That's just the thing. So when you're writing to a newspaper, your name has to be there. You must put your name and your position on wherever you are working with. So make sure you are writing the letter for a course and provide your name and address correctly. That's just the truth. because it's something when you're writing to newspaper, it's what they have to publish. And as such, your name, your full information has to be there. Now, remember in the informal letter, we looked at the main structure of an informal letter. Now, we also want to look at the main structure of a formal letter. I said it earlier that we have a chronological way of doing things. In writing, there is order. In writing, there is decorum. So you must work with that order, because once you omit a particular thing and move to the other, you will definitely lose your mark. And remember, this teaching is for students who know that at some point they will have to find themselves in an exam condition to write a letter. So know it that the structures of a formal letter are quite different. The structures of a formal letter are quite different from the structures of an informal letter. There could be similarities, all right? There could be similarities, but note that there are still differences in them. Pardon me, I forgot to put the receiver's address, Now, when we start off with the formal letter, the first is the sender's address. That's the writer's address. The address of the writer, just like in the formal letter, is written at the topmost right-hand side. That's the address of the writer. Then immediately after the address of the writer and your date, you now have the address of the receiver. That is what I refer to here as the name and designation of the addressee. All right, so nothing was omitted. The name and designation of the addressee. Now, when we look at when we finally come to the sample, you will see all of these structures that we have mentioned now. So let's become, until we get to that point. So for the name and designation of the addressee, we are talking about maybe you're writing to the director, you're writing to the commissioner, you're writing to the vice principal, you're writing to the principal. All right, so what's the designation? That's the office of the person. Ministry of Education, the director, Zigmatech Limited. That's it. Then after you have your salutation, after salutation you have the subject. After the subject you have the body of the letter. Under the body of the letter you have the introduction. Every letter has its own introduction and they are not the same. Then you have your content, that's basically the two-three paragraphs, and finally your conclusion. Then you have your complimentary close or the closing line, complimentary closing line. Then you have your signature and your name. So let's continue. How to write a formal letter, sender's address. In formal letter format, it is important that you mention the sender's address in order to avoid any confusion and disputes. Okay, this is the person writing. I want to write back to this person. That's the address I'm writing back with. All right. Then we have the date. The date must be accurately written. Please do not be in a hurry to write it in a slash form. Write it in words. 19th January. You observe your comma, 2022. Do not write 19/12/22. It is very wrong. Be it in your informal letter or your formal letter. Now we talk about the designation and address of the addressee. Say skipping this part can lead to potential confusion. Thus, it is necessary to include the designation of the receiver. Now, mentioning the accurate address of the letter will ensure that it reaches the proper destination, and that's the truth. If I'm writing a formal letter and I want to write to the principal of my school, as a teacher, I know that I will not be in school for 2 days. Now, it will be out of place to just write my address and write the body of the letter without directing it to the principal of the school. If I give such letter or drop it at the gates, at the gates for the security men to send it to the school, you will agree with me that there won't, in fact, anybody can read the letter because I didn't really address it to anyone. But when the receiver's address is there, it is better off understood that you have written it to someone. So you have your subject, write a strong subject line which can convey the meaning of the entire formal letter. So if I'm going to be absent from school for 3 days, definitely I'll write letter of what? Absence from school. So that tells the receiver everything I have to say in the body of the letter. Oh, this letter is basically to tell me that she will be absent from school. The reader will begin to look at for how many days will she be absent, what is her reason for being absent. So you see that your subject, or what we call sometimes title, passes the information, the body of the letter, to a large extent to the reader. Then we have the body of the letter. It says it's important that you write your message in the body with precision, that's preciseness, and in a concise manner. You don't have to be elaborate. You don't have to be verbose. So when you're writing your body in a formal letter, you just go straight to the point, stating the exact reason or reasons for which you are writing. Then again, under the body of the letter, it is out of place to use slangs. The slangs are not allowed in formal letter, and word contractions are not also allowed in formal letter. One would ask, what are word contractions? Examples are there. Do not break words. That's contraction. If you want to say, I do not like it, state it that I do not. You can't say, I don't, it isn't, it can't. No. You write the words in full. Then we have the complementary clause. Now, hear this. Unlike in the informal letter, where you have lots of complementary clause for it, in a formal letter, it is strictly yours faithfully. All right? Strictly yours faithfully. Or you can use any of these other three, but basically for British exams. When we come to our Nigerian exams, like your WAEC, and you are writing a formal letter, please restrict your complementary clause to yours faithfully. With regards, best wishes are used for British exam, like your IGCSE or checkpoints, for those who are conversant with that, with those exams. Then we have the signature and name of sender. Please sign at the middle. Your signature should be in between yours and faithfully. That's where your signature should be. Then when you're writing your name should start off directly under the Y for yours. Yes, that's how it's written. So then you have your designation of the sender. That's your work. What is it that what's your position, so to speak, your position. So for the final element of the letter, you must include a proper designation of the sender. It is part and parcel of a formal letter format. So we want to look at sample formal letter. It's important that we look at the sample formal letter writing. Now for the sample formal letter writing, we have this address like the previous one. I told us that address of the writer is key, is a must. That's the very first thing you do when you are asked to write a letter of any sort, be it informal letter, be it formal letter, or the semi-formal letter. The first thing that comes to your mind, you go through a question, you know that you are attempting letter writing. You may not necessarily read the questions first before writing your address. You could write your address, then go back to check if you're writing to someone who is in another country or state. Then that would now limit you on where your address should end. Well, knowing that there is no way you will not write the address of the writer. But I want to clear one thing. For such exams as checkpoint and IGCSE, I said it, they don't need address. For such exams as checkpoint and IGCSE, those are British exams, they don't need address. Address is not relevant. For our native exams, Nigerian exams, once you're writing a letter, you must do well to write the writer's address. Now, remember we talked about punctuating your address. Your address must be punctuated. You see how I punctuated my address, observing my comma, and finally, where my full stop had to be. Next thing we must know is that every first letter starts with capital letter. Every first letter is written in capital letter, and the date is well written. I didn't write 17/12/22. All right, so the next thing is the address of the receiver. All right, but here we'll look at three things. We'll look at the address of the receiver, we'll look at the salutation and the title. Remember, it's a format, it's a sample that I'm giving us. So the receiver's address here is the divisional officer, Umunnochi Local Government Area, Abia State. Now my salutation is what? Dear Sir. Now the S there is written in capital letter. It's more or less stating the person's name. There's no way I would write someone's name in small letter. So the Sir has to be, the S in Sir has to be in capital letter, after which is the title, letter of appreciation. That's what I'm writing, letter of appreciation. Now I want to clear something. For the title, you can write everything in capital letter. As you can see, mine is written in capital letter all through. Now it's also possible, that's another way to write it, for you to write the first letters in capital letter, then others in small letter. But hear this, if you must go with the second format of writing your title, that is the format of the L in capital and other letters small letter, and the A in appreciation in capital and the others small letter. If you have a preposition, listen well, if you have a preposition like the of, it has to be written in small letter all through. Now, when you're writing your title, the only parts of speech allowed to be written in capital letters, the first letters to be written in capital letters, are your verbs, your nouns, your adjectives, your adverbs, all right? But when it comes to article, when it comes to preposition and conjunctions, you write them in small letter. I just hope that was taken. All right, so this is the receiver's address, the divisional office, police officer, Umunnochi Local Government Area, Abia State. Then my salutation, Dear Sir. After Dear Sir, you see there is a comma, then the title, which is letter of appreciation. Now this is the body. Now, if you remember very well, if you are following us through and through, you will notice that in the informal letter writing, I told us that paragraphs are different. We have two types of paragraphs. We talked about the indented paragraph and the block paragraph. I remember telling us in the informal letter writing on the body aspects, the paragraph type used was the block paragraph. Now is the indented paragraph. You will notice that in the indented paragraph, a space is left before the first word is used. So that's indented paragraph. But one thing with this indented paragraph is that you must be careful enough to make sure that once the first word starts on a particular line, the second paragraph must align appropriately with the first paragraph. The second paragraph must align appropriately with the first paragraph. So it's very important. It will be organizationally wrong for you to start your first paragraph in a particular line and the second paragraph you're moving inward more than necessary to start off the second paragraph. So this is the introduction and the body of the letter. So you see that in my introduction, I had no business with asking the divisional officer, how are you? I hope you're fine. How is the family? I just went straight to the point, which is, I wish to thank you for your prompt intervention in the recent communal clash between my village and Mbala village. Now, these two villages have been foes for decades. You see, they're moving now to another idea. Remember, I told us that a paragraph contains an idea. A paragraph contains an idea. So the first paragraph was about thanking the divisional officer for the prompt intervention, the quick intervention. Then the next paragraph is trying to buttress on what happened, how the fight ensued, and to what extent it has, brought the people. So that's the second paragraph now. It says these two villages have been foes for decades. As a result of this, much distractions have been done to both communities. For instance, the first bloody clash happened 5 years ago, and it claimed the lives of 5 relevant chiefs and 3 pregnant women from Umbala community in Ngodo community. The 2 buildings in each secondary school were burnt down. So you see, this is the next paragraph expressing the second clash, and the third paragraph talking about the recent clash. You see that the ideas discussed in each paragraph are different. And you notice also that the paragraphs are well aligned, all on the same line. Then finally it says, sir, I would suggest further measures, stating measures that should be taken for further occurrence. He stated the first measure, stated the second measure. So it's out of place for you to state 2 measures in the same paragraph. Well, when it comes to content, if you do something of that nature, if you put 2 ideas in a particular paragraph, the only problem you would have is that your organization will be affected. The score for your organization will be affected, but your content will still be complete for you because you have discussed what you were asked to discuss. It's just that you did not organize it in a more appropriate way. Then finally, you have your complimentary close. Your complimentary close, your sign-off, and the designation of the sender. Now, you see that in a formal letter, we have our complimentary close as yours faithfully, while in our informal letter, the complimentary close is yours sincerely. Now, in a formal letter, we have to sign, but in an informal letter, we don't sign. In a formal letter, you write your name in full. Remember, it's a formal writing. As such, you have to write your full name so that the reader will know who he's dealing with or whom she's dealing with. Then your position is also important, but in an informal letter, that is not allowed. So basically, we've been able to not just to explain to us how to identify the informal letter and formal letters, we've as well stated the differences between the formal letter and the informal letter. I want to repeat that in a formal letter, you have 2 addresses, while in an informal letter, you just have 1 address. While you have the address of the writer and that of the receiver for a formal letter, in an informal letter, you just have the address of the writer. Now, in a formal letter, you have your salutation, and in an informal letter, you also have your salutation. But the difference now is that in an informal letter, my salutation can be, altered. It can be changed. It varies. Let me put it that way. My salutation varies. But in a formal letter, it's strictly dear sir or dear madam. Dear sir or dear madam. Now, also in a formal letter, we have title, but in an informal letter, we don't have title. Then in a formal letter, there is no room for pleasantries, but in an informal letter, there is room for pleasantries. Then the body of a formal letter has to be formal. Your language use must be formal. It must not be chatty. It must not be friendly because you're not writing to a friend. You have to use formal words and formal expressions while writing your formal letter. But in informal letter, we can use friendly words. We can use chatty words. We can use our slangs. We can use our contracted form of words, but we don't do so in a formal letter. Then finally, in a formal letter, we sign off with yours faithfully, but in informal letter, it is yours sincerely. There is no signature in an informal letter, while in a formal letter, we have a signature. In an informal letter, you can write what the person calls you, but in a formal letter, you are going to write your name in full. All right, thank you so much. I think we've come to the end of the formal letter. So let's take a question. Let's take a question. All right. Let's take a question from our WASE. Let's see what we can do. All right. Okay. All right. The first one we looked at says, write a letter to a friend, and we agree that it is an informal letter that we have to write because it's a friend that we are writing to. All right, so let's look at this. This is actually not a letter because it says several articles have been published. It's about writing articles, and articles deal with talking on a particular subject of interest. All right, let's look at this number 3. It says cases of malaria have been on the increase in recent times in our country. Cases of malaria have been on increase in recent times in our country. It says write a letter to the Minister of Health, or write a letter to the Minister of Health discussing observation and suggesting at least 3 ways of curbing the disease. Now, looking at this letter, I know that it is a formal letter because I'm writing to an office. And what's that office? Minister of Health. I'm writing to the Minister of Health. So, to start off this type of letter, I'll first of all write my address. After my address will now be the address of the receiver. What is the address of the receiver? The minister, that's the office, Ministry of Health. The minister, Ministry of Health. Where is this Ministry of Health? It's in maybe let's say it has to be in Abuja. Yes, Abuja FCT. That's the address of the receiver and the designation. The address and the designation of the receiver. So after that address, I will start off with what? Dear Sir. Now, there's one thing I want to clear. When you're certain about the gender of the person you're writing a formal letter to, state it. But where you're not certain about the gender of the person you're writing to in a formal letter, then it has to be Dear Sir /Ma. Dear Sir /Ma. Or you put, sorry, Madam, not Ma, because Ma means mother. Ma means mother. So where you see Ma is wrong. It's Dear Sir /Madam or Ma'am, M-A--A-M or M-A-M. So that's it. After that, I'll write the title of the letter, Ways to Curb Malaria in Our Country. That's my title. Another person can decide to write on suggestions on curbing malaria in our country. But mine says ways to curb malaria or to remedy the spread of malaria in our country. That's the title. So title can differ depending on the understanding an individual has about the topic that has been given. So after the title, remember, if I'm writing everything in capital letter, I will not underline. But if every first letter of the words in my title are written in capital letter and others in small letter, that means I have to underline. This is very important. Then after that, I'll move to the body of the letter and subsequently the complementary clause. Remember, we are asked to state, first of all, we are asked to do what? Discuss your observations. You have to discuss your observations. After discussing your observations, you now suggest at least 3 ways. So it's possible to write 4 ways. If you have 4 ways, some could write 5 ways. Or if you write just 3 ways, the person who wrote 4 ways or 5 ways will still have the same mark with you, but you must not limit the ways of curbing this disease to 3 because you have been told to write at least 3 ways. So these are things we must put in mind when writing our formal letter. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using the ExamGuide app. The app scores and gives a detailed explanation of all the questions at the end of your practice test. You can learn a particular topic of interest with different modes like study mode, mock mode, and practice mode. It also has other features that make learning fun. It is a must-have for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and share the videos to people that will benefit from it. Bye.